Welcome to the Bullish Drive Podcast, where we explore the realms of faith, mental performance, and personal testimonies through conversations with high-level performers. Join us as we extract valuable insights from their experiences to supercharge your pursuit of peak performance. This is the Bullish Drive Podcast. What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Bullish Drive Podcast. I'm James Dreesen, your mental performance coach, and if you're new here, first off, welcome. Here on the Bullish Drive Podcast, we sit down with high-level performers, professional trainers, professional athletes, and musicians, and we talk about those mental skills and journeys and testimonies that help them compete at peak levels in their careers, and hopefully just pass the wisdom on to you and provide a knowledge and skills and things that you can implement into your life today to reach your goals and vision. So hit subscribe and follow so you don't miss out on any future episodes of the Bullish Drive Podcast, and check out our YouTube channel just to see all the guests we had on in the past. And so today I ask the question, what does it mean to be present? Because we hear it all the time, especially if you read the Bible and you adhere to Matthew 6:34 that says, why worry about tomorrow when today has worries of its own? But what does that mean? Because we live in a time in our culture where everyone's looking at the next great thing, the next best thing. Comparison is not only a thief of joy, but it's also a thief of time. And we can sit there on our social media and just scroll, see what everybody else is doing and be like, dang, I wish I could be doing that. And when you do that, you're not living present. You're trying to see what the next big thing is and you chase it. And anxiety comes from worrying about tomorrow. And we say depression comes from existing in the past. And so one of the best things we can do is be present and in the moment. But once again, what does that mean? It's a daily choice. It's a lifestyle. And through that lifestyle, you take away certain worries. You take away anxieties that social media and the news and everything going on in the world will try and pour into our lives. And we forget that we only can control what we can control. And the best way to do that is to bring ourselves back to the present moment and remember there are actions that we can take today that can help drive us closer to our goal. And now when I first started out with the Bullish Drive agency and just like dreaming up this business and dreaming up kind of my vision and hearing God's calling to step out on my own, I reached out on a whim, out of faith, to an NBA mental performance coach whose name is Betchart. And he responded. And since then, he has always been willing to pick up the phone and chat with me and just talk about what direction I need to go to. And that's really just the way he lives. And we'll talk about that, this idea of graciously giving, not only the benefits, but what that means for yourself, what that means for your own confidence and your own mental health. When you're living in that lifestyle of graciously giving, to have the passion to pour into other people. And Graham lives this life. He lives that life that creates this living present, living in the present. And he talks about that today. And I'm excited to share that conversation with you because he continues to be a great mentor for me and the Bullish Drive agency. And at the end of the day, just like this podcast, we just want to share wisdom and give these conversations to you so that you can better your life and take your games to the next level to reach your vision and your goals. And so I'm incredibly honored and excited to invite Betchart onto the Bullish Drive Podcast. Graham, welcome to the show. When I first started out in my little venture in mindset and mental performance coaching, I reached out to this guy right here, Betchart. And, this whole journey, you have been there to pick up the phone and chat with me, which I super appreciate. And I know that that comes deep down in just who you are and your values about graciously giving. And so it's been a huge, tremendous help for me. So for those who don't know, how about you introduce yourself and kind of talk a little bit about who you are, what you do. And we'll start there.
Okay. Yeah, man. Right on. Well, thanks for having me, James. I've been doing mental performance coaching for a couple decades. Really enjoy the work. I find myself just finding creative ways to do it now. Like I make a lot of music, different ways to move mindset. There's all these different creative ways to help with mental training. But Yeah, I love the work. Got into the space a few decades ago, helping out basketball players, helping kids out. And my goal was to help some kids make it to the NBA. And then I was like, if you make it, maybe you share what we've been doing, you know? So my philosophy is always like, basically just share this stuff. Like that's the most joy I have, is just sharing and giving, and just finding ways to creatively like give this to people, you know? But yeah, man, this is just what I do every day. I was just getting off, before I got on this, I was working with an MC, an artist, and I'm making beats for him. And I think we found some magic with a couple of these. I'm having fun, like just putting stuff together, finding new ways to give it to people, and all things mindset in all ways, you know?
I love that. I love it. And, you know, and when you say creativity, that's definitely just something you really carry that to another level, just from reading your book and how you present mindset to people, especially the younger athletes. Like you said, those who want to go for the NBA, you know, what that takes. Can you talk a little bit about how you got into working with that population and what that's even like? Because yeah, that's a whole nother type of group of people.
Well, I love basketball, you know, growing up. I started playing seriously like in, you know, 6th grade, 7th grade. So basketball has always been a big love of mine. And I started doing a lot of this mental training just on myself in the mid to late 90s. And then when I got introduced to sports psychology, I didn't even know it was a field. When I got introduced to that, I was like, well, I just want to take it to basketball. Like it was just so clear in my mind, like just go take it to the place I love. And what really hit me, James, was I felt like I had something to offer basketball.
Yeah.
And like taking from the game or wanting something from it. I was like, I actually have something to give to it. So it gave me a place of service. And I just started giving to basketball. And I grew up in San Francisco. So I just started helping out Mission High School in San Francisco, where I'm from, and just took it from there. I didn't think it was going to be as successful as this was. You know, I just enjoyed sharing, teaching. Maybe I could help a couple lives out. I wasn't quite sure it was going to win this big. Like I didn't see that, you know, that one kind of threw me off. And I think that's one of the cool rewards of like faith and devotion and teaching and serving, is you go, man, I'm doing it because the pleasure for me is the giving.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah, it's not a result I'm looking for. It's the actual just giving. Like that's the actual pleasure of me. I like in that creative space. And it turns out these mental skills work really well. You know, I mean, things start to happen if you start really practicing this stuff. So I always find myself like I love to go serve and give and be creative. And then in my mind, I'm like, then I'm just going to take off. And then usually stuff starts to happen. So I get like connected there and I don't want to leave, or I want to stay. But all of this feels creative to me. Like that's what it feels. I live on the forefront of creation, and I don't know what's going to happen each day. Like I don't know what's going to happen on this call. I'm really here just tuning in and kind of reading what the next play is, you know?
Yeah, that's so good. And that's a big part of just your approach to mental health, right? Like being present. Right? Being in the moment. So what is that? Can you break that down? Like, what does it really mean to be present, especially in sports and, you know, psychology side of that?
Yeah, man. Well, I didn't even know the present was a thing till I was 19 years old. And I was constantly living in fear, right? Anxious about the future. Like I was just, what's going to happen if I was so worried, or living in regret from the past. My first teachers was like, you need to work on being here more often. And I was like, what does that, like, what is here?
Yeah.
You know, and then she taught me to meditate, taught me the power of my breath, right? Started giving me tools to bring me into the present. And it's like, okay, this is the present. The present moment is right now. It's like, it's my heart is beating right now. I'm really here. Once I became aware of that, my intention became to try to be here more often, you know, just for my own life, because if we're not here, where are we? You know, and what are you doing? And there's nothing wrong with planning or reflecting. But so often in my life, I was just anxiously somewhere else instead of here. That really made me feel a lot better as a teenager. Like I started to lower my anxiety and worry and all those things. And then I was still playing hoops. Like I walked on Division III, played at UC Santa Cruz. And then I was like, oh, wait a second. This stuff helps on the court. Without even telling anyone. It wasn't even sports psych how I learned it. I was just like, oh, I'm so present. I'm not worried about what just happened. No, so it was hitting me that like, wow, this stuff is super, super powerful. So the present to me is like where everything you're looking for exists. Everything you want is right here. And we just have to learn to tune into it. And we've been trained since we were little kids to always be trying to get to what's next.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yep.
When you're in school, they're like, where are you going to college? When you're in college, what job are you going to get? What job? When are you going to get promoted? And I'm like, what's the point of this? We're always running somewhere. So it really hit me that like I wanted to work on being here more often and not just anxiously getting to other places. And I try to remind myself right here, right now, I'm living my dreams from 10 years ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Instead of me going, oh, right now, where are we going to next? I'm like, dude, I'm living my dream right now. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Literally, I know we have a bunch of stuff going on in life, but I look at it like this, like, I grew up in the 80s. I was born in the late 70s. And in the 80s, like AIDS was a killer. Like that, AIDS was like the most devastating thing ever. And now low key, we like beat it. Like you can like, I'm like, oh my God, I know we have a million things going on. I'm like, do you realize we beat something that's so astronomically deadly? Yeah. So I try to really like, instead of always be like, what's next? We're not doing enough. I try to really be grateful for what's here. It's easier said than done in the modern society,
Yeah.
Our attention is pulled everywhere, but man, I try to live it, James. I really try to live being present, being where my feet are, using your breath, all those tools to help you kind of find yourself here and be here, man.
Yeah. And you learned it through like practical like experience. Like it's kind of like you had to live it, right? So
yeah.
Now when you're talking about kids, like our attention is pulled all over the place. So what is your first step to teaching a young athlete? I guess first and foremost, what is the youngest athlete you would work with, and how do you start with that?
Man, I've 5-year-olds. I've worked with 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds,
5-year-olds,
kindergarten, basically, right? I mean, if you remember being back in kindergarten, you were singing a lot of songs. There's a lot of music. It's a rhythm, right? So we learn with rhythm. So what I found with 5-year-olds is they can get into a rhythm. So if we're doing a breathing exercise, say, okay, we're going to breathe in for 5 seconds, try to hold our breath for 5 seconds, breathe out for 5. They all want to try. They're like, oh, then give it a try. If we're doing affirmation work, like I don't react, I respond. I don't react, I respond. Like they'll get into it, Yeah. So I found it's never too early to start this stuff. Just start planting the seeds, introducing the language. To me, mental training and mental fitness, mental performance, it's a language. It started like I didn't know the present was a thing until someone said the present. And I was like, oh, amazing. Like, didn't mean it was easy to be present, but now I knew I had something to work for. Like, okay, I want to be in here more often. So when I start with young people, it's always just introducing a language. Like present or next play speed or what we call palms down, choosing your response instead of doing this. This is where I knew this made sense because I would go to 5-year-olds and I was like, everyone know what this means? And they'd be like, oh, that's not good. And I say, what do we do this? And they're like, yeah, that's it. So intuitively, they all know with body language, you can work with young people like that. So I've worked with 5-year-olds. That's always been the hardest group until I learned to be basically singing and dancing and body language with them because you can't talk to them.
Right.
You can talk to a 15-year-old, right? You can talk to a 20-year-old, but a 5-year-old, you start talking, they're just going to kind of look to the side or, like go somewhere else. Yeah. I really enjoy planting these seeds with young people. And so as they grow, they have that language in them. And because the earlier you can learn this language, the earlier you become aware of it, and it just opens up a whole new dimension to you.
Oh man, yeah, that's so good. When I talk to parents, I feel like you're kind of like training them to race the world, like race the clock, like before the world teaches them stuff, and then you have to try and train that out of them, right? Like, now when you approach and say like plant those seeds, is that kind of like the same mindset you're looking at it? Like you want to teach them these skills prior to all the other stuff they might learn?
Yeah. I call it proactive mental skills training. So the idea is to teach it to them way before they're like asking questions. Like you just teach it because humans need this. So I've never waited for someone to ask me questions or wait to like ask for help. I just start teaching because they need it. It's like kids aren't necessarily going to ask for vegetables when they're young, but you got to throw them in there and you got to find ways to do it. And later on in life, they'll be like, man, this is the best stuff ever. You don't quite realize it young. So I think as leaders and coaches, what I'm finding is you can't make the mental training an extra thing that they have to do by themselves. It has to be included in everything you're doing. right?
Yeah.
And where I've seen this field shift is it used to be like, oh, you got something going on? Well, see if you can go get some mental work. And now I'm like, coach, you can't talk like that. You got to be doing this every day without question. Like, don't put a 12-year-old to decide if they want to do this or not, right? We make them do it because it's good. I don't mean make them in a bad way, but like, don't make an option to not do this work.
Yeah. You know? Yeah. Make it normal, right? Make it a normal thing. Because if you add something that a kid has never heard of before and be like, go do this, you really think they're going to be like, sure, I'll go do it.
They're not going to do it, man. So as a coach, you just, if you're in charge, you just say, this is how we train. We train our body, we train our mind, we train with food, you know, all those aspects of it. And we just do it and that's where I found that kids are getting really good success out of this is when it's non-negotiable. And it's like, oh yeah, this is just what we do. You know?
Yeah. It's just part of the game now, you know, and
exactly.
And then how are the coaches? Because I mean, I feel like now with just your track record, like it might be a little easier to talk to coaches about. But in the beginning, what was that like approaching coaches and being like, hey, this is what I do. What do you think about this?
You know, man, that's always it was always somewhat of a little bit of a challenge. You know, I found some good grooves with some great coaches, but it depends on where they are with their mindset. You know, if someone's never done mental training or been a part of it and you introduce it to them and they've never done it, sometimes they're just not aware, you know, so it's just not something for them. The way I look at mental training is like water. So if someone is like, water's not good for me, you clearly know they have no idea what's going on, right? So the first thing, because we know how valuable this is. So I have a ton of compassion for people. I meet them where they are. Yeah. And then what I've done a lot of times, that's why I always taught the kids, is because I just tried to find a way to teach them because they're very open. Sometimes it's a stereotype, but sometimes an older person can have a closed mind. Yeah. And that's a stereotype, but sometimes you'll notice that. So if someone's kind of set in their ways, it can be challenging. But what I've done, like what I did in like San Francisco, I went to Mission High School where they welcomed me in. And I was like, well, if you don't believe in this, we're going to start, like things are going to start happening here. And sometimes winning helps people open their mind. You know
yeah, just a little bit.
Or in some people's context, losing. They're like, how are we losing to these guys? And then you find out they're doing mental training that can open up other people's minds to doing this work.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if you know this stuff, you know it. It's not even like I don't argue with anyone. I'm like this. I don't argue over water. Like if you don't realize it's cold, that's okay. You know, so I just do my best, meet them where they are. And sometimes what I've noticed, James, there's a pattern where someone maybe who's not so into it at first, you kind of stick with them, keep helping, and then a little while later, they're like, it turns out this stuff is really good. You know, keep helping. Then a little while later, they're like, this is the best stuff ever. Keep going. You know, so you just try your best to serve and help those coaches that maybe haven't been introduced to it yet. So, you know, ultimately, if you're not doing this, it's probably not going to work very long if you're not doing some aspects of this. You know?
Yeah, that's good. And I'm finding out just with my podcast here, I have a lot of parents that listen that have young athletes. And so when you say like 5 years old, I'm like, oh my gosh. And it's 100% like what you're saying. Like a lot of parents are like, I didn't even know this was a thing, you know? And now it's like interesting. So I'm assuming, and this is just an assumption, but in your experience, parents do they buy in pretty quickly to this, to your work?
Parents are dying for it. They know their kids need it. They know it's there. I do a little class every Sunday night at 4:30 for kids, and we'll have 30-year-olds on the class, 5-year-olds on the class in the same class. Yeah. Doing the breathing exercises, doing the meditation. We'll have parents there. So I found that like parents are really open to this, and they're just looking for places where they can do this with their kids. You know, some place where this can become consistent, can become steady. You know, but yeah, no, I'm open to it. I don't know any parents that really aren't open to it at this point, you know?
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely becoming more of a thing in sports, right? It's a lot of people are starting to talk about it a little more now. When you started, and I don't mean to say it like you're a million years old. Just like in the beginning, because we've talked about this, right? It was a slow go in the beginning, right? And what kind of resilience or grit, or where did you kind of grow just that drive to continue doing what you're doing through the hardships? Where did you find that strength?
Man, well, I'm a big believer of devotion over motivation and commitment over confidence. So if you do this when you feel confident and motivated, like those two words people always want, I'm like, that's not it. We're like, devotion and commitment to me are unstoppable. And so I knew I was sitting on something valuable. I mean, if you know the mindset stuff, you know how valuable this is.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm just going to walk this out and I'm just going to take my time and keep doing it. And for me, the challenge was the pacing. I wanted it to happen really fast. You
That's good.
have a vision for what you want, you know what you got, but you're like, it's just not going to work like that. So I had to just take my time and make sure I didn't quit. And so I like to say I was walking to win with lethal patience. Instead of running to a result anxiously, I slowed it down and was like, if I slow this down, I can do it all. Instead of running quick and quitting, if I take my time and stick with it, and I would just come back to the present, James, and be like, just do it today. And I designed what I call a one-day deal, where I would just take my mind and be like, just do it today. Because there was so much pressure on what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen next year. And I was like, dude, I have no idea what's going to happen in 10 minutes.
Right. Yeah.
I would just bring myself back to the day and just do the work. And I would feel all the outside noise of how are you going to make a living, this field, what's going on. And I was like, just do the work today. So I was just training myself to perform like an athlete. Essentially, I was in a contract year for like 12 straight years, where I learned to live with not knowing what's going to happen in the next hour. And I learned to live like that. So when people would be like, oh man, the financial crisis of 2008 or something, that really rocked me. And I was like, I didn't feel that at all. And I don't mean that to be like, because I was like, oh, I've always been in that space. I learned to live and I don't know what's going to happen in 10 minutes. That's the truth for everyone. We pretend we know what's going to happen in 10 minutes and we think that's comfort or security, but no one knows if you're about to drop and have a heart attack. No one knows if you're not. So the security, I realized, wasn't really security.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Things you think like, now they're comforting in a moment, but it's really not. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. I just got so comfortable, James, like living in the unknown, that I forgot I was even in that space. And then I would hear people talk about all these world crisis. And I was like, what's happening now? Like, you're being rocked and you're worried what's going to happen. I was like, oh dude, I've already trained myself to live in that space. And I don't know what's going to happen in 5 minutes. And these are people with tons of money, all this security, but they hadn't trained their mind. So they didn't know how to be in the unknown, no matter what. But I trained myself to be in the unknown, which is, it can be very unsettling for people, but it is unknown. Yeah. So I tried, that's the whole present. Like, you live in the forefront of creation. And I kind of like, even if I didn't know how this was all going to play out, it's clearly played out okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it has. Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, like, you don't have to know all those things that people are really desperate to know. It's like, what if I just knew right now and I trained myself to be here and just perform today? That was it. And my life got simple because I couldn't do anything else besides it. I couldn't give a business plan. I couldn't predict what was going to happen. I was like, well, I'm here today and I'm alive and I can serve. And then, 12 years in a row of doing that, you become an overnight success. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, so I've learned to be like, I don't even really read outside metrics. Like, I've had a few like pro players I work with, like NBA players, and they'll be in contract years, and a contract year for an NBA player in general is filled with a lot of anxiety because it means they don't know what's going to happen next year. Yeah. This person could have $100 million in the bank and their anxiety is overwhelming. So it has nothing to do with like, if you think a number in the bank is where your security comes from, turns out that's not correct. Now, it provides you with a little something. I'm not saying don't have any money, but I know people with endless money, and it does not do anything unless you actually do the mental training. Yeah. The money doesn't actually provide that for you. You know what I mean? Man. Because I would look at it, I'll be like, damn, bro, you have money for like 5 generations. And they're like, what's going to happen next year? I'm like, anything you want. But it's still, they don't know how to deal with the unknown. Yeah. So if you can get good at the unknown, you show up in the present curious because you don't know, you can discover things to do here that are like really cool. And you know what I mean? Like, you can see things here and you can perform. Yeah. Man, that's so profound. Like, what you just said is so profound. You know what I mean? I feel like it's just like you said, it's a mindset that we just don't live in these days, and
And do you feel like you had to get there out of necessity, or like where do you even start training yourself to do that?
Man, I kind of look back my whole life. Like I went to an academic powerhouse high school in San Francisco. It was called Lowell High School. I have a college degree. I got a master's degree. And I think my high school degree is the most prestigious degree I have. The school is so legendary. But the pressure was so overwhelming on grades. Like it was just great. And I couldn't excel in that. Like I had a tough time. So this whole process has been like, I don't know how to do these like outcome things that everyone's worried about, and it seems to set your life up later. And I eventually just kept surrendering to, I just know how to be here now. And if I'm here now and I'm present, I've got to trust that I'll be able to do the right things today that'll make it so tomorrow will be okay.
Yeah.
And you kind of learn to let go of like these big plans and come into the moment, kind of like an athlete, right? They're like, are we going to win? You're like, I don't know, man. You got to play. Yeah. Like you actually have to, like, you can't just be like, I'm only going to play if I know I'm going to win. It's like, no, we don't know what's going to happen. So let's show up, let's enjoy this journey and let's be here for it. So that's always where I've tried to live, is right in that space. Almost feel like I was forced to, because I couldn't make it the other way, James. Like I don't know how to check out from being present and just run a math problem where I'm calculating how life's supposed to go, and then A, then B, then C, then D, and all those. I lose my spirit when I do that. I lose all of my energy. I lose like it just kind of goes like this. So I was like, how am I going to live life like this? Just calculating, or here, present, not sure what's going to happen, but like I'm here. Yeah. And I decided this route. And it's scary, because it's not a lot of it set up in society to have this be like, oh, you're doing great. Because they're always like, what's going to happen? And where are you going? And if you're like, I don't know, that freaks out a lot of people. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, so, but that's how I live. That's how I'm here right now. You know what I mean? Yeah. And this moment.
Yeah. And you're present, and you're doing what you need to do. Right. And that, which ultimately does affect the outcome later, but you're not even worried about that. And I love that. And it actually reminds me a lot of kind of where I get my mindset from, and just driving in the moment is from a Filipino proverb. It's called the proverb of the turtle, which is, my home is where I am, right. And so basically wherever you are, whether finances or homeless or in a house or wherever, you got to make that like your home. That's your home. Yeah.
And profound energy is always here. My mind, we're just unlocking this energy, and it's always here. It's not like some geographical location you have to be for that energy. It's here.
Right.
You unlock it. You can have that experience everywhere you go of unlocking full power. But as soon as you think you're supposed to be somewhere else, by definition, you can't unlock it here, because you're like, it's not here. When it is here. It is. Yeah. It is. I'm talking energy. I'm not talking about like a result you want, or a certain, like a car you want to buy. Like you can get all that, but like the energy is here. And if we can tap into that and unlock that, now all of a sudden, like things are really happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, that's so gold. I love that. And lastly, we got like 5 minutes left, but I do want to talk about just the graciously giving piece about it, because that's also just a big part of who you are. Where did that begin? Where did you find that, like, graciously giving? Because I feel like that's also something that's not big, not only in the sports world, but just in our society in general right now.
Well, man, I haven't found a greater pleasure than serving and giving. So I'm always like, what are other people doing out there? Are they trying to feel miserable? Like, what are they doing? I'm like, it just feels graciously give. And if you have something to share, sharing it. Anyone knows that once they attain something, the funnest thing to do is give it away. You know what I mean? So when I got introduced to this stuff in 1997, I was like, this is literally the greatest stuff ever in existence. That's how my mom saw it. So I thought, what could be more fun than just giving it away? And so that's it, man. Like, it's just a pleasure. And when you give it away, it's creative, it's fun. And there's a real currency that's there with human beings. And I don't know if you've noticed, but humans are having a tough time connecting with other human beings these days. We tend to connect on this. So I was like, the funnest thing I have is going to get with people and sharing this with them.
Yeah.
That's how I want to live my life. Yeah. Like, the gift is the sharing, not that then I won a championship or got some job. It was like the actual thing was the thing. So for whatever reason, I've always been aware of that. And I've been aware that that's the gold, that that's the actual pleasure. And I've been taught that you have money to do what you love, being around who you love. And so I understand that's the greatest wealth of all time. And I love sharing. I love sharing with who I love. So that's how I've tapped into all of this. And I refuse to live a life another way, you know, and that's the part where I'm like, why? Like, I get like if people don't want to do that, but for me, this is how I wanted to live, you know, and this is what felt the best for me. And I wanted to see if you could live like this and it could actually work. And it does.
Yeah.
You know? And you got to stick with it, right? That's why, you know, like, don't do something for like a month and quit. This is like, I live like this every day. I don't live like this to try to get a result that I'm going to stop living like this and live some other way.
Right.
The means are the ends. Like, that's how I look at this whole thing. So I'm living how I want the end to be, which is joyously giving, you know, like sharing. And it turns out this opens up a lot of doors when you joyously share. It turns out a lot of business comes your way when you do this. It turns out opportunities come. People ask me all the time, how do you get those opportunities? I'm like, you know, I joyously give every day. You don't think people want to like open things up for me because of that? And I'm not doing it to try to get that.
Right.
But it's amazing how that works. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because I mean, like, humans are not, like, I feel like humans were designed to give and support each other. Like, we're social beings, you know what I mean? And so because of that, you naturally feel good about giving and you feel good about receiving, and putting a transactional piece on it, like, I feel like just totally shatters like that whole concept.
Kills it. That's the art you got to find. You got to find how to give and receive without it being transactional, and that's the art. Transactional stuff is everywhere out there, and it's a turnoff for everybody. Once you sense someone's got a transaction in mind, you're no longer present, right? You've already checked out, and you're just running an op. And once you sense there's an op, there's no creativity involved. There's no like anything is possible because you've already have a solution that you're like, nope, this is the finite thing we want. I am acutely aware of that. I am acutely aware of when someone wants it finite, and if it's not infinite, I'm not going to do it. If it's already a preconceived notion of how it's supposed to go, that's like saying, "Oh, I'm going to go score 30 points in a basketball game." Oh, you just messed the whole thing up. As opposed to let's go be present and see what happens. You might have 50 tonight, but you just messed that up by wanting to have a certain outcome. So that's just me. I tend to want to live in like the all things are possible. It tends to be scary as well to live in that space, right? A comfort conclusion. I don't live with the comfort of conclusions. I also don't want to know the day I'm going to die, and that's the conclusion that's coming from all of us here. You know what I mean? So I live it like I don't know what's going to happen, and I read what's happening, and we kind of roll in that space. Now, James, I do the work. So everyone listening, I gotta blend all this with my work ethic is absolutely 100%. Like, I do this work unconditional. I do it when I'm not motivated. I do it when I don't feel like it. I do it when I'm not confident. I do it in the dark. I do it when I'm vulnerable. I do it when I'm uncomfortable. So always, we got to preface that. My wife goes, make sure you remind people of your work ethic, because I think people might think it's just something happening. I work for it every second of every day. You know, so that all the magic happens when you have the work, you have the love, and then you kind of let go what happens after that. But my work ethic is absolutely like my superpower. And I can every day in silence with no one's approval, without any feedback from anyone. I'll do it because I feel aligned inside. You know what I mean? Man. All this comes from that, you know.
Man. Come on, dude. Like, let's go. Like, come on, man. Like, if that's not, it's oh man, we should all.
That's why this is all focus is a choice. You know, confidence is an action. Greatness is a decision. It's a decision to do this every day.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Once I say devotion over motivation, that clearly means I'm not motivated every day. But devotion means that's what I'm gonna do it every day. That one shocks people, James, because they're like, how you do that? I'm like, you got to want to do it. And you got to want to do something so much deeper than just basic motivation, like to devote yourself to something. My experience has been devotion is the sweetest emotion, that when you devote yourself to something and stick with it, I mean, in the craziest storms, you're like, I can't believe I'm doing this. Like, this is insane. It's amazing what happens when you do that. Now, you only get to experience that if you're devoted. You can't pay your way to that. You can't be popular. There's like devotion is devotion.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm a product of devotion. And that's the thing that when I tell people, like, the thing you want to copy about me, the mental training works, the mental skills works. You know this, I know this. This is new. This has been around forever. It works. The magic is the devotion.
That's right.
My brother, that's the magic. That's like where this all takes off. And so I just devote myself. If I'm lucky enough to wake up, I just do it today.
Man, see, that's so good. Like, all this has been so good, man. This has been awesome, just sitting down and chatting with you and sharing your wisdom, because I know you love to share the wisdom. So thank you for that. Is there, where can people find you? Like, I know you have a place where you can connect with people. Where share some of that. Where can people get a hold of you?
My web, GrahamBetchart.com is my website. So you can email me from there, stay in touch. I kind of post stuff I'm doing. Social media wise, I'm Graham the Guide, Guide on Instagram. And then that's the name I release music under as well. So I've dropped 100 songs this year. It's all mental training songs. I make the beats behind it. So I've artistically found this little lane to share mental training. So on all streaming platforms, check that out. And then I have my company, one of them is called Palms Down Basketball. That's my little class I do on Sunday for kids. So on TikTok and Instagram, it's at Palms Down Basketball.
Love that. Love that, man. Well, thank you so much for hopping on the show, Graham. It's always a blessing to chat with you and learn more. So awesome. Thanks, Graham, for joining us on the show today. And if you want to learn more about Graham and what he is doing with Palms Down Basketball and just mindset and mental performance, check him out at www.grahambetchart.com. You can find him on Instagram at Graham the Guide and Palms Down Basketball. And also, if you're an athlete or musician who's looking to level up their performance, reach out to us at www.bullishDrive.com. I'd love to set up a free consultation, just hear how we can partner with you to help you reach your goals. Well, thank you guys for joining us on this week's episode of the Bullish Drive Podcast. We'll see you next week. And always remember, it starts with you and your destiny is waiting. Peace.